I haven't posted a video in about a month. I didn't plan that. But over the last few weeks, I've been in New Zealand, and I just got back yesterday, and I thought that, it would be good to kind of sit down and go through, what I've been up to over the last month, and also the significance of why I started this channel, why this channel means so much to me. But yeah, I just felt that it wasn't right for me to post anything, and I didn't feel, that it was what I had was right at the time, especially with a lot that was going on, like in my world and the people around me. People were going through grief. There were deaths taking place. People that were dying. Well before their time, well before we thought was their time. And so I didn't feel that I could post anything. But yeah, over the last few weeks, I've been in New Zealand, and the reason why I went was to surprise my boys. I've got two young boys, 10 and 13. Well, actually, one turned 11 yesterday. Celebrated his birthday in New Zealand, and their mother's family, asked if they could spend Christmas and New Year's with them, which I was happy for them to do so. But it was kind of strange because I hadn't been on my own here since Leah passed. I've always had the boys, so I've always had somebody here with me, and so it was the first time that I was going to be on my own during that period of time. And so I'd planned to work through, but the week before Christmas, I managed to get some leave in between Christmas and New Year's, and I thought that it'd be nice to surprise the boys, to spend Christmas and New Year's with them, because I hadn't spent it from them. And so I surprised the boys on Christmas Day and spent Christmas evening with them. I flew out Christmas morning, arrived there Christmas afternoon, and spent the evening with them. And it was great, just to see how stunned my oldest son was when he saw me at the door. He's like standing there, and just kind of like, it was like he saw ghosts. And he came and, hugged me twice. Which was really lovely. And then the little one came through, and he was quite surprised as well. And it was great. It was great to be with them. And it was great just to spend the time in New Zealand with them. Because I was really missing them. And I missed them now, they're still there until the end of January. So I came back yesterday, and yesterday morning we celebrated my youngest son's birthday. But, over the last month, it's been very challenging, being on my own. I'm having to navigate and having to organize, things for my boys, and also just trying to stay afloat, really. My wife and I had been doing so well together, and somehow, when she passed, kind of like capitulated, really. And I found it really hard. And so I was trying to, navigate my way through life and trying to find my way out of the pain and the grief of losing her. That I wasn't really all there in the sense of, being financially stable. I was not wise at all. And so just before the boys went to New Zealand, our car that we'd bought secondhand had broken down. And so when I was told that I couldn't drive it, it was a real kind of blow. And I found myself very emotional because I just felt like I was failing the boys. I was failing them as a father, as a provider. And I couldn't, organize for them to get to the airport. And so, I I had called and messaged around, but everyone was working, when the boys were leaving. But I'm so grateful that, one of Leah's friends came through, and she took us, and she wanted to, see the boys and give them their Christmas gift that she does every year. And so it was good timing. And so she took us to the airport. And then when I told her that I'm doing the surprise visit to New Zealand, she offered to look after Prince. And so she took Prince. But strangely, when I was in New Zealand, I lost my phone that weekend after Christmas, and I haven't had a phone for over a week. And just during that time, I just found time to all of a sudden slow down. What was supposed to be a 10-day trip just felt like it was a month. It just seemed like time slowed, and I found myself having to kind of adjust because, I was going to force into not having a phone. I hadn't planned it, and it wasn't intentional. But I had no phone, no device on me, and I had a laptop, so I was able to check my emails in the evening, but you can't sit there on a laptop for hours, especially when you're out and about. And so, I found myself being in a state where I was more consciously aware, of my surroundings, and also consciously aware of, the people that I was with and spending time with. I was a bit more connected because, I wasn't forced to check messages or check social media, because these devices, they're a distraction basically, and they're a part of our world, they're part of our lives, and it's just our new normal. It's just our normal basically, not new, but our normal. And so for me to be put into that position where I had no phone, it felt like time really went slow, and it was an interesting experience. And what made it even more interesting was my childhood friends. They arranged to spend time with me, and so they took time out of their busy schedules to come and hang out with me on New Year's Day. And so they came and they picked me up and organised for us to basically take a trip down memory lane. So we went and visited some significant places that we grew up at, so we went to our old high school and spent a little bit of time there. Then we went down to our old primary school, and we were just talking about the things that we used to do, and how we first met, and how we used to beat them in arm wrestling and whatnot. And it was really nice, and the ironic thing about it was that we had no phones back then. We had no devices. I think we had PlayStation 1 that just come out when we were in high school, but we had Sega and Atari, I think. But we had no, PS4. We had no VRs or laptops like this, or phones. And so we were basically growing up in an environment where we were outside, creating our own fun, coming up with games, that we thought was fun, or we would find out from somebody else that was visiting, the game that they would play, and that we would adopt that into something that we would do ourselves. And so, those were the things that we were doing, and it was great. Time was very slow. The days were long. They didn't go by quickly, but with devices, it's a distraction. So you're constantly on there. You're checking things. You're constantly connected to all of this information, and somehow it disconnects you, from the reality around you. And so being in that position where I had no phone, was kind of like, I kind of found myself in the position where I was more conscious, more aware of what I was doing. And it was good. It was great. It's really made me reflect on what I need to do, even moving forward with things. And so, that's what we did. And then yesterday we celebrated my son's birthday, and in all honesty, I wasn't going to do anything, because birthdays is not something that we really make a big deal out of. My wife and I, like if we're going to do anything, we do it within budget. We don't overspend, and if we don't have the budget, then we don't do it. And because our boys get everything that they need throughout the year, and they get things that many kids don't get, and so we feel that birthdays is not really something that, is that significant that you have to celebrate and to splash out on. So, our boys are aware of that, and we try and celebrate with them. We try and throw birthday parties and whatnot, but it's not something that we push or we kind of build up, expectation for. And so I wasn't going to do anything, but I think, the family in New Zealand, we were expecting something. And so I just arranged for everyone to meet up for breakfast, and being on my own, I can't afford to do any outlandish parties or spend outlandishly. Like, I basically spent my last dollars just to go see my boys, because that's more valuable to me. And losing my phone it cost me even more on a budget that that I was already stretched on. And so and I really felt kind of stink, because I didn't have a cake for my son. And I think people felt that I really didn't think much of it, but I think people felt that but for me it's like, hey, I'm a single parent, it's not like I'm separated from my wife, where we're both still able to financially support the boys. I'm on my own, and so we didn't have a cake, but his mum's family managed to get him a cake in the evening. When I got home, they sent me photos, and that was great, and so when I got home, I thought I'd put something together and put photos together, and my youngest son always complains, he thinks he doesn't have many photos, and then we got so many photos of his older brother. But when I was going through it last night, and I'm one that doesn't do things, if I do something, I tend to dive into it. And so I found myself in that kind of predicament last night, where I was going through every photo, like dating back to when he was born. And so I was going through hundreds and hundreds of photos, and he's got so many photos, but also videos, because he's our entertainer, he's our little performer, and so he's got so many videos of him singing and dancing, and it's hilarious. But going through it, I just found myself kind of revisiting, the memories of my wife, and I came across a video where he sang at my wife's at his mum's funeral, and at the funeral, he was pointing at his mum, and then I kept on watching it, and I had done a tribute for her. And so I watched the tribute, and the tribute was probably about 16 minutes, and I just broke, I was bawling my eyes, and I was in so much pain, it was like that crying where it's so painful in your chest, and I was crying, and telling how much I miss her, and so I was crying, but I kept on thinking about Jonah, and Jonah, not Jonah Longwell, the rugby player, but Jonah in the Bible, he's a prophet. And so I thought, I'm going to read that book. And the book is very short. It's only 4 chapters. And it's about a prophet. And his name was Jonah. And God called him to go to the city called Nineveh. And the city has about 160,000 people in there. And God told him to go and tell the city that, if they don't turn from their wicked ways, that God is going to judge them, and that they are going to be overrun in 40 days. But Jonah refused to do so. He refused to go. And so he went the other way and went to this place called Tarshish, and he jumped on a ship heading there. And whilst on the ship, all of a sudden this massive storm started battering the ship, and it was just getting worse and worse, as the ship went on. But this guy Jonah goes down to the bottom deck and he falls asleep, and so these guys on the ship, the workers in that, are praying to their gods, and every one of them are praying to their own gods to try and save them, because they're just about to, get shipwrecked. And so one of them goes down and sees this guy sleeping, and he's waking him up and saying, how can you sleep in the middle of the storm? You need to get up and pray to your God, to stop the storm, And then he starts asking him questions like, who's your God? Where's your God? Where's your God from? Where are you from? What city are you from? And so these guys are like, trying to figure out what's causing the storm, that's... there must be something on that boat. And so what they do is they cast lots, and the lot falls on Jonah. So they look at Jonah, and Jonah looks at them and he says, well, if you want the storm to be calm, you need to throw me off the ship. And then they think, no, we can't do that, and they're like, well, who are you? And he said, well, I'm Hebrew, and the God that I worship is the God that controls the ocean and the land. And so fear fell upon them, and they were like, no, we don't want to throw you off. They don't want to kill an innocent man. So they were praying, we'll pray to your God and ask him, no. And so these guys try and row, their way to Tarshish, and the more they row, the worse the storm was getting. And that's when they realized that if they don't do anything, they're all going to die. So they end up throwing Jonah overboard. And everybody knows the story about Jonah and the whale, or the big fish. Basically, the Bible calls it a big fish. Technically not a whale, because a whale is not a fish. It's a mammal. But so he gets swallowed up by this fish, and he's in the belly of this fish for 3 days and 3 nights, and that part in itself is a whole different story, It's basically prophetic image, of what was to come. But, in the middle of this fish, Jonah prays, prays to God. And God hears his prayer, and he basically spits him out, gets the fish to spit him out onto land. And he gets up and God tells him, go to Nineveh. And he obeys this time, and he goes to Nineveh. And he basically goes and he preaches. And whilst he preaches, the word gets to the king, and then all of a sudden the king, from the king down to the least, they all start repenting, and they all start crying out to God, and they all start, basically declining, the gods that they were worship, or the evil that they were being involved in. And in that, God showed mercy, and he basically turned away as punishment and judgment on them. And this angered Jonah. He was very upset by that, because he knew that God was a merciful God, and so he was upset. So what he did was he went and he parked up on the bank of the sea, and he just was lying there. But the heat was getting really bad, and it was causing him to suffer. And so, but then all of a sudden, this plant just sprouted, and it grew, and it became a shade for him, and it became his refuge. And so he was basically using this, as for his comfort, and avoid, the harsh conditions that he was under. But then the next morning, God, sends a worm, and the worm eats up the plant, and the plant dies. And then all of a sudden, the harsh conditions, starts to affect him, and affects him so bad that he cries out to God to kill him, that he wants to die. You might as well let me die. You've killed this plant. And then God's like, why are you showing mercy to a plant that you never planted and you never watered, but yet you can't see the mercy that I have for 160,000 people in this city? And that's the end of the story. And it really is a depiction of just God's mercy and God's love and God's forgiveness, and as I was reading that, I was contemplating that it was a reminder of me. Like, I felt like that plant was Leah, she was the plant in my life, that God had planted, God had watered, I didn't have anything to do with that. That was all God. And then when God allowed it to be taken away, I just felt like, might as well kill me too, like I felt like that, I felt like, what's the use of me being there? And that's when I realized, I needed to go to church today. So this morning, I woke up, church starts at 10, and I woke up at 20 past 9. And like I said, I didn't have a car. The car had broken down. And the only way to, get to church was to walk. And when I looked at the map, it said that it was going to take 30 minutes to get there walking and only 5 minutes to drive. And so I thought to myself, I'm just going to jump in the car and drive. And so I started the car and the engine was rattling, and then I drove out and the neighbors were all looking, thinking this car is really noisy. And so I started to drive, but the closer I got to church, the noise all of a sudden started to disappear. And by the time I got to church, there was no noise. The car was just basically driving like as if nothing was wrong with it. And then when I got to church, the message was exactly what I needed to hear. And it was about God renewing strength, which is something I really need. They talked about the book of Isaiah, how even the strong man fails, and the young grow weary, but those who wait upon the Lord, will renew their strength. And and it was a great message, and it was one that I needed, and I went up for prayer. Normally I'm reluctant to go to the front, but I went up, because I needed it, I needed to be reminded, that He's there and that I don't need to do this on my own, that I'm not alone. And it's the same for anybody out there, you're not alone. And no matter how hard things get, there is hope. There is hope, and, reading the book of Jonah was a reminder of just how merciful, loving, faithful, and forgiving God is. And so, that was good. And I got to meet new people as well. And I got to meet this young man who said I looked familiar. And then I find out that he was the videographer who was, videoing my son when he sang at the Christmas carols. And he said, your son's got a beautiful voice. And when I shared to him my story, about my wife and I being singers ourselves, and he was really touched by that, to the point where he said, I want to bring my friends next week, and I hope I will be able to see you and catch up and talk, because he felt that, I had something, to share. And so, it was a real blessing today. And I made it home in the car as well. I managed to pick up some milk. I came home and just rested. Felt it was good to share this experience, So out of all of this, we continue to take that step, one step deeper, one step deeper, no matter how hard things seem to get. You just keep going, keep taking that step, and you'll find yourself coming through. So, if you're going through, or if this resonates with you, like the tuning fork, I want you to know that you're not alone, and post a comment, and a question, and we'll work it through. That's why I believe this channel is important. It's an important space. And feel free to message or even ask to kind of come on. But I think it's time for me to go to bed now. But God bless, and we take it one step at a time, one step into faith, one step into hope, into healing, one step deeper. Mahalo.